Everybody, welcome to one more round with Josh Norris. I'm excited. I got Brandon Fougnies here, the founder of Strict Vision Athletics. Brandon and I, we met about a month ago. He is an IV customer of ours, and now we're actually partnering to do IVs at his very cool gym/studio that he built out of his garage. He literally started a business out of his garage. So welcome, Brandon. Great to have you, man.
Thanks, bud. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so obviously we're gonna have some images that are flowing through this so people can see, but if before we get too far into it, what's your Instagram? Because I want people to check this out.
Yeah. Strict Vision Athletics is the Instagram, and it's also the TikTok, and it's the YouTube. So if you Google Strict Vision Athletics, I guarantee you're gonna get thrown to one of those 3 pages.
Perfect, yeah. And when I looked at it, it was so funny because I saw all the cool like comic characters and just the really neat flair that you had everywhere in the place. And I was telling my partner that was in the gym business for 30 years. I mean, technically he still is. He owns Burnabill Fitness, whatnot. Oh, wow. He's like, dude, I think I saw him on TV. And I'd asked you, and like, oh yeah, I've been interviewed a few times.
So, yeah, recently. Yeah. It's funny how it all sort of compounds over time. You don't really get into this, at least I didn't, for the goal of eventually becoming locally famous or whatever you want to call it, but it's really in the last year has it all sort of taken off. And there's a big lesson to be learned in that, especially for those of us who are going the route of the entrepreneur. If you're somebody who's trying to market or brand for yourself, you have to have an understanding that while there are exceptions to this rule, you know, where guys will hit a viral video or two and then all of a sudden they're famous and that's it.
Right.
That is so far beyond the exception to the rule, it's not funny. Everything takes time, and we've been seriously marketing consistently for at least, call it, I mean, I've been doing it by myself for about 7 years, and as a team collectively, we've been together for at least 2. And when I say consistently, I mean at least 1 to 4 pieces of content being pushed per day.
Yeah.
So that's what I consider consistency. But yeah, that's led to some really exciting stuff. Got on with Danielle with Fox. She came out, and we've had now we're doing more podcasts, and we're doing our podcast. So it's growing.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about your podcast coming up because I know you're launching it. I got the sneak peek of the room. I mean, just dope. It fits the feel and the vibe of the gym. So how did you come up with the gym? I mean, and really the flavor of what you did with it?
Yeah. It's first and foremost, the comic thing has always sort of been my background. I tell people I read comic books before I could even read. I've always liked superheroes, and how it came to fruition today was just sort of, who doesn't want to look that way? It's motivating to us, and especially now with all those movies, everything it's so much notoriety is behind the Marvel franchise that it's just an easy little niche to find ourselves in. But the gym itself, I started technically in the business almost 12 years ago. So I started in the business as a 17-year-old intern. I got up with a guy, he's in North Scottsdale, his name's Ian Danny. I trained as an apprentice intern for about 4 years there while going to college. So that gave me really a very intensive crash course into strength and conditioning from a practical standpoint, because all he does is NFL. So I sort of skipped the line and just went all the way there right off the bat.
Wow.
And that, at the time, it's funny how in life certain things you don't fully appreciate when you're immersed in them, but then later on you're like, wow, that was a really incredible experience. That really impacted me. That's one of those things in my life where I look back and I realize just how blessed and fortunate I was, because it wasn't anything that I'd earned. I was 17, I had a high school degree, I knew nothing. Got in there, that sort of gave me the at least the real spark of interest. And I'd wrestled, I did gymnastics, I played soccer. I was always an active kid, but really turning the corner into sports science happened right around the tail end of my, call it sophomore, junior year. And that was the 2nd or 3rd year I'd been with him. When I got out of that, I started Strict Vision. Now that, my facility as it is now, and you touched on the fact that it is a home gym, and that's the direction we'll take the conversation a little bit later, but starting the home gym process was just a passion project. You got to understand, when I first did this is before COVID, this is before, there really wasn't this huge infatuation with home gyms. Now it seems like they're kind of everywhere. There are channels on YouTube and people on, there are social media massive companies that's all they do. They review equipment, they tell you how to build equipment, gyms and all that kind of stuff. The home gym thing has really taken off. We were really fortunate to be kind of at the genesis of that movement, where I had already started building just for myself, but I had already kind of had a little bit of a vision on what I wanted to see happen because I'd had my experience with the NFL. That gave me not just the understanding of proper periodization, training, methodology, and just how to do all of that stuff at the top level, but also gave me a real understanding of, okay, you know, what kind of equipment do you not need? What do you absolutely need to have? What are the options? Where should you go?
What are those things that you found?
It depends on the athlete, and depends on what kind of if you're going like me, see, because there are hundreds of different ways you can structure a gym, all depending on the size of your square footage, the type of clientele you want to bring in and attract, the kind of training you want to do. I mean, someone who wants to do call it a Pilates fitness group class out of their backyard is going to do an entirely different set of, you know, parameters than what I would do. What I did was what I had already been taught. I wanted to create a facility that mimicked the best facility in the state of Arizona, which is PEP. That's Ian's. There's maybe one other that I would say is in now our market, but at the time he was it. There was nowhere else that competed in the state of Arizona. So what I wanted to do was take that and replicate it for general population. I wanted to take the spare no expense mindset, get the best equipment in the world in a small space, and gear it toward one person. And that's the biggest cornerstone of the foundation of everything that we've built, is that everything is built for one individual person. It's an immersive experience that is never the same for any two people. Every person that comes and trains with us gets a totally different experience than the person because everything is tailored to you.
Right. No, which is awesome. And when I went in there, I started thinking about because I love to work out. I'm like, how would I, utilize this? And as I started looking at the dumbbells and I saw the different machines you have set up, I'm like, this is a good flow in the gym. And obviously that's the way you set it up.
Yeah. So definitely didn't happen the first time. The flow.
Yeah.
And that is because we get a lot of people ask questions all the time about that sort of thing. And some people, of course, would say like, oh, that's really cool, but I can never work out in there. It's way too cluttered. It's way too disorganized. And it is, there's a lot in there. I mean, it's maximized. I can comfortably say that.
Yeah.
But I made sure, and this is where a lot of the sort of trial and error mixed with a little creativity kind of comes together. Learning what kinds of equipment to purchase from which companies that perform what movements inside of a square footage footprint that you need to fill is sort of the song and dance that I have to do. I mean, in my facility, I did it 20, 30, 40, 50 times because you've got all those pieces of equipment that, okay, well, that won't fit. I'll sell that. This will fit in its place. Let's get that. Now, the cool thing is because we've gone through this with us and now with so many other people as well, since we designed for our clientele, now it's much more systematic. Now, if someone comes to me and says, hey, all right, I got an 800 square foot garage, I got a $45,000 budget, what can I do? Now it's all kind of, it's very replicatable.
So going back to you working in the NFL at 17 years old, right? Like that's a dream job for a lot of people, and you're getting it at 17. What was it like working with the athletes? What was your day-to-day in that?
So it was overwhelming at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, I was never, because I never played tackle football. Our school didn't have it, and it turned out to be a very, very big blessing in disguise. I see that now. I mean, I'm 31. I don't have any pre-existing injuries that nag me. I have nothing that really bothers me, knock on wood.
Yeah.
That is because I did not play tackle football. I've got many friends, played high school, played football in college, did that sport. And I'm not knocking tackle football. I love football from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
But I would never want to go back and play it because you just get hurt. You just do. And seeing on top of all that, knowing what I know happens at the highest level, and maybe people are under the misconception that maybe those guys don't get hurt or something. Once I reach it, then I won't. They're always hurt.
Yeah.
Injury prevention and recovery is kind of what we did. To answer your earlier question, what was the day-to-day like? We would get the guys in their off season. They would come to Ian, and Ian, Danny, there's a couple coaches throughout my, I guess you'd call it my academic experience that have always sort of, their names keep coming up. Charles Poliquin was one, Ian Danny, Dave Tate, John Wolfe. There's a lot of guys that really have influenced the world of strength and conditioning. But now that a few of those guys have passed, I would comfortably say he's probably the top mind in strength and conditioning, one of them. And what's so strange is you kind of have to be in the know to know who he is. He's not like a Mark Bell who's like on social media and he's just known throughout all the world. Everyone kind of knows, if you're into fitness, you kind of know who he is. Ian Danny's much more just kind of name drop him to certain people, but in that circle, in high level NFL, and it wasn't just MLB, NHL, like they got athletes from all walks of life, but everyone knew his name. Everyone knew his methods and his gym. And dude, if you see his gym, it's ridiculous. It's 3 stories, and it goes, the bottom is like, he's got obviously a turf outdoor, then the strength gym, and then on the second one is his PT room where you'll get scraping, cupping, active relief therapy, cryo, all that stuff, and then you got the kitchen. So he's literally got this experience for the athlete to climb these levels, and just every day they get everything they could ever possibly need. And what I did when I went in there was I wasn't just the intern, I paid to be a client, to be trained by him. Okay. And at the time, it was something that was sort of, subsidized by my parents. They're like, okay, you express an interest in this. This is certainly going to be an expense on our part, but you really want to do this. Let's play around with it, go in, train a few days a week, see how you like it. And I fell in love with it. I'm a 17-year-old kid. And at that time, Larry Fitzgerald, Ryan Clark, Jeff Charleston, James Harrison.
Wow.
James Harrison, you know that guy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, and all those guys were training there. They were at their prime. When Harrison was, the year he stole the Super Bowl from us, I was there training with him. I remember I met him.
Your fault.
I met him the season following that Super Bowl is when I met him. And I was like, oh, man. I know who he is. Right. And it was so funny because I've never been a fantasy draft guy. I never really got into that so much, but I would have friends that all knew where I was training, and they'd be like, who you work with? I'm like, oh, I got Paris Lennon is coming. And they're like, do you know who he is? I'm like, well, not really, sort of. And I think in part that may have been why they kind of kept me around a little bit, because I wasn't so much a fanboy. Yeah. For me, I've always been more nerdy than sporty. I was always much more interested in the sports science, the what was happening, kind of working with them rather than who they were as celebrity athletes, which is good because they don't want that. Athletes who are coming to a place to work, they're spending $300 to $500 a sesh. They don't want someone running up to them and asking for their autograph. That's not why they're there. They're there. This game face time. Yeah. James Harrison, man, you would think someone like that, and you ever see that guy without his helmet, you see his face, you're like, dude, that's a scary man right there. Every day he'd come in there with that Game 7 mentality, man. His face, he was just, I've never seen anybody train the way he did, and all power to him. The guy's now, he's 45 and he's still doing that. Yeah. He looks the same as he did when he was in there 10, 12 years ago working with me. And it's just I didn't earn, or frankly didn't there are way more qualified people than me that got in and got to do that. But I just an incredible blessing. Yeah,
totally. Well, they always talk about opportunity and preparedness meeting. That's luck, right? You were prepared, the opportunity presented itself. It just happened a little earlier than it does with most people, and that's all right. That's a good thing. So your clientele now, because we were talking a little bit about it, who typically trains with you? Who's a really good candidate to train with you?
Yeah. Sometimes, because I get that question semi-frequently, and it's tough to narrow it down to one. It's not professional athletes. That's the big one. Everybody thinks it's okay, it's got to be a professional athlete. Nobody else would. Just the sticker price for training. It's $150 a session to come in. That's sort of the base. And then from there, if you want to take on IV, if you want to do active relief therapy, if you want to do stuff on top of that, well, then it starts to climb a little bit. You want a meal plan, so on and so forth. So that right there will certainly carve out your market demographic just based on the price of your product, whatever that is. And this is nothing special to personal training. This is across any microeconomics. That will determine who you get.
Right.
For us, being where we're located and being the price we are, we get a lot of retired athletes. We get a lot of doctors. We get a lot of lawyers. We get but that's just kind of who I have now. And see, my answer to that question is always kind of impacted by who I'm currently working with. Currently, I'm working with a couple surgeons, a dentist, a couple investors. It's mostly people in their, call it their 30s and 40s that are semi-successful or very successful, one of those two. But it's changed dramatically over time. I've worked with high school athletes, college athletes. I've gotten a couple pros. It's, you know, it all just varies based on who hits me up.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really loved is when you took me in the backyard, and obviously you got like that area where they can do the sleds, but then you move in. Well, tell us what's in the backyard. It's recovery, because it'll come better from you.
Yeah, and it'll be good because you play like a video of it, just show it. So you've got the entire, the vision, which I kind of broke down for you when you get, the entire house is sort of dedicated to a different area of physical fitness or recovery. When you go in, everybody kind of comes through the back. You've got the garage gym, which is sort of the beginning. That's the genesis of the whole idea, was in the garage. From there, you've got kind of the side door, which actually allows for the turf on the side, and you can do your basically all of your circuit training and all that kind of stuff. And I do a pretty cool job of setting stuff in outdoors and indoors. Just depends on what the client is doing, what their workout is of the day, where they're at in periodization. But you've got the garage, the outdoor area for the circuit training, which is sort of the thing that most home gyms will miss, is the square footage to do turf training.
Yeah.
The cool thing about us is we have like a 25-yard strip. So that's enough to do sleds, anything, battle ropes, sprints, all that kind of stuff. So we've got that, and then around the side is what I consider phase 2. This is the second part of the year. See, everything has happened kind of in stages over the last, like I said, 7-8 years. In the back, we've got a contrast therapy. Now, the close proximity of contrast therapy and strength and conditioning was the primary focus of my research during my master's degree, during all the kind of research that I've done in my past, has always been on the conjunction of those two things, because I've always found it rather fascinating, because so often people do them, but they do them separately. They don't do them together. You'll do your strength training, go to the gym, and then maybe once a week or so you'll go and you'll do cryo, or it just hasn't really been that popular. Contrast therapy has not been that popular up until maybe the last 2 years in America. Contrast therapy's been around for thousands of years, but
And for those that don't know, contrast therapy is?
Contrast therapy is exposure to extreme cold and extreme heat in some kind of a partnership. So that can change all based on the preference of the person, and everyone has their own little flow, I like to call it. Some people like to do, 3-3-3. Some people do what I like to do is 10 and 10. And that's extreme. That's not for everybody. I tell my clients, like, look, don't feel you must stay in there for 10 minutes. Like,
that's the ice bath and
sauna. So I do what I do is and I do this in some manner just about every day. So I will do cold, then hot, 10 and 10. And then maybe the next day I'll go hot and cold, 10 and 10. And that's just aside from the removal of toxins, inflammation, it is a dopamine release of 2.5x. You will never have a bad day. That's what I tell people. You'll never have a bad day following contrast therapy. It's amazing. You just have this elated, euphoric sense, and it's so different than how most people leave their workout. Because most people, you leave your workout, you're like, oh man, okay, well, I'm glad I got that done. It's a relief to get it done, but you feel tired, you feel depleted. All your protein degradation has just happened. You've got to get a meal. You've got to start. But if you leave having done contrast therapy, you're like elated. You're like happy. You're leaving, you're like, man, I feel great. This is weird. I'm feeling like more energized now than when I first came here and did my workout.
Totally.
And there's all sorts of like strange miscellaneous benefits that I found along the journey of doing this. I have a gal, she has Lyme disease, and she came to me and she said, she's like, look, I'm here because I really don't know where else to go. I can't go to the gym. I get chronically sore for days on end. If I go to the gym once, my muscles spasm. I can't do it. I've seen your methods. I've seen that you do contrast therapy following strength training, and I'm really just hitting you up because I want to try it. I want to see if it will work, and it worked. She told me, it's the first time I've ever left the gym, and the next day I'm not so sore that I can barely stand. And that is it. The whole area needs more research. There's a lot of you get into the academics of it, there's a group of people that say it's all hooey, it doesn't work, it's all in your mind. Then there's a whole group of people that actually do it, and they'll usually swear by it.
Totally. I'll speak to my experience with it because, see,
Please.
I was a member of Optimize, and I still would be, but I got sick for a little while. But when I was going there, it was the cold plunge, and then it was the infrared sauna, and I would do that. And the longest I ever got was 7.5. So kudos to you for 10 minutes and that. But you know, funny enough, I hated the sauna more than anything. But I would do that after my workouts, and it was about a 15-minute drive from my gym.
Yeah.
And yeah, I slept better at night. I was less sore. You know, usually 2 days later, you know, you're pretty sore, especially if it's like a leg or a big body group.
Yeah.
And man, it really helped like crazy. The fact that you have all that in one facility is huge, because I don't know many people that have that kind of contrast therapy with the gym attached.
The gym right there in the same location.
Mm-hmm.
And there's we could do a whole podcast episode just on the timing of strength and conditioning and contrast therapy and how they interact with one another. Do I do it immediately afterwards? Do I wait 2 hours? Do I wait till the next day? What happens to my body on a physiological level if I take those periods of time? And what I have found is that there's certainly a decent amount of research to suggest that if you do your workout, then immediately go into contrast therapy, there can be a negative impact on hypertrophy training, your ability to grow muscle, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So for those clients, if it's a client, and this is my counter to that argument whenever that's brought up, because that has been brought to my attention. You're like, hey man, you got these people jumping in the ice 15 minutes after strength training. That's not good for this, and this. So oftentimes the goal of the individual training, he or she is not trying to pack on muscle. It's a misconception that so often a lot of people have, is that, okay, you're going to the gym, or you must be trying to get bigger. That's got to be the goal. If you're doing this, you must be trying to pack on muscle. That's not always the goal of the client. Sometimes, whatever, they're trying to lose weight. From weight loss and fat loss, the conversion of white to brown fat, contrast therapy is amazing. And again, there's an answer to these problems in any way, shape, and form. If there's a client who's trying to pack on muscle, somebody who's like, look, I want to do both, but I got to try, space it out. Push the contrast therapy at night. I tell my clients, look, dude, it's fine. Just text me and come back here at 7 p.m. Do it then. And as you've experienced, if you do it at night, you will sleep better than anything you've ever done in your whole life.
Yeah, it's like a knockout drug.
It's strange. And it's this, it just blows my mind that there are still, because it happens a lot. People will, because we put all this online, people will like attack. They'll be like, "It's not, this is a scam. This doesn't work." I don't really. I mean, Joe Rogan does it. Like, there's whole huge communities of people that really, really embrace the cold and the hot.
God, many of the successful people, period, like they have them in their homes.
Tony Robbins has one. He's always jumping in it and doing it. And again, just because. There was like the only one I've ever really found that showed this. There was a single study, I think it was from like 2004 or something like that, where they took a group of people, they had them do legs. They had the athletes put one foot in a bucket of ice, and then they had the other foot out. Then they measured the muscle density following that experience, and what they found was just like what I said. Okay, this cold actually might interfere with hypertrophy. It might impact the ability to increase your muscle density and interfere with that inflammatory response. And the inflammatory response in the body is we have a very interesting relationship with inflammation, we as human beings. It's like, you need it, a little bit of it. You don't want too much of it. You don't want it for too long, but you got to get, inflammation is so strange. Yeah. You've got acute inflammatory response, which is a normal physiological experience following a workout. That's what you want. That's good. You want that experience. You don't want chronic inflammation, which is what you'll get with a lot of autoimmune disorders, people with diabetes, all that water that you're retaining, all that inflammation stays on you.
Arthritis, Crohn's, all those cause bad inflammation. That's one of the things with the IVs that when I got into the business, I didn't really know, but as I started to get to know our medical director, Dr. Who, he explained how beneficial.
That's an awesome name.
Yeah, totally. And it's HU, by the way.
I love it.
So he was talking about how the protocols he wrote were specifically designed to reduce inflammation for people that have autoimmunes, and like they have to do it for once a week, for multiple weeks, but they notice a drastic difference in like things like zinc and B6, those help reduce inflammation, which also are in like cold and flu type of protocols as well. It's fascinating to know the alternative medicines, so to speak, that really can help people and not just put them on a pill.
the fact that this is not at least suggested by every doctor in the world for people. I mean, how many people right now are on diabetes? See, right now, I don't know. But the fact that Western medicine has entirely it's not even swept under the rug, it's blatantly silenced the idea that getting into an ice tub can help you with these problems. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, how much does it cost to go and get ice and put it in your tub and go in it? How much does it cost to turn that thing to cold and just get in it? But the problem is when you're dealing with a group of people, especially the type 2 diabetic community, you're dealing with a group of people who have eaten their way into a set of problems. So those people by nature are going to have a real issue if their doctor comes to them and says, okay, here's what you need to do. We need to get an ice bath and you need to get in it every day for 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt. Yeah, that is going to hurt. Yeah. Enjoy. Yeah. And that is it's significantly less painful for me to just give you this and take that. Totally. And by the way, I can get a subsidy from pharma, and I can make money off that. Right. I can't make any money if you go get ice from Bash's and put it in your tub. Yeah. But it has changed the lives of so many people around me. I can speak to my firsthand experience, that's my favorite way to talk about any topic, is what have I actually seen happen to people around me or to myself. Because anytime you dig up a research paper, well, that can be countered by this paper and this can be countered by, but if I can say from what we've done and how we've structured our facility and what our clients get to do, I can tell you the benefits that they have seen. And it's just awesome to be able to offer that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, but like this is part of your mission, right? To be able to get this, not only people living healthier, but hey, how you, if you do, have an illness, things that can help you recover from that better. And like that's part of our mission at Regenerate. Same kind of thing. We want people to know that you don't have to just take a bunch of pills. And I have, I'm someone who went through heart failure. So I'm on what's called Entresto, which makes my heart beat like it's supposed to. There really isn't anything else out there that can do that from a natural standpoint. So I have to do that to get my ejection fraction up, right? However, all the other stuff that they prescribed to me, I'm like, okay, that makes me feel like crap. This is terrible. And I stopped taking the rest of it because I knew what it was doing and affecting me, and I'm like, it's not positive whatsoever. And if I get hooked on it, then I'm going to be dealing with that for the rest of my life. So the goal is to get off Entresto here once I get, the good, clean bill of health and all that. But man, that's part of our mission, is just to make sure that people understand that there are natural ways to heal. There are natural ways to make sure you're living your best life, like you were talking about, the dopamine, the serotonin that's released when it comes to like an ice bath, and because you're putting your body through a stressor. Yeah. And anytime you're putting it through a stressor and then it's not stress, that's exactly what happens, is those endorphins start to come out, which that's what we all love about, working out. Like you were talking about leaving the gym. And when I leave the gym, I feel freaking great, man. Yeah. Sometimes, you feel a little crushed and a little tired, but your mind's a little clearer, you got the serotonin going.
You get that little achievement in the day. It's that little mountain. That's the other thing that oftentimes doesn't even get put in the conversation of benefits, are the mental benefits from doing this.
Yeah.
That is a simple, cheap, and easy little mountain to overcome. Just do your 7 minutes. If you can get in that for 7 minutes and spend that amount of time in your day and accomplish that, as soon as that, and I've done it for years, that feeling never goes away. As soon as I hit my 10-minute mark and it beeps, you're just like, yes. You get out, it's this sense of accomplishment. It's this tiny little thing that took 10 minutes in your whole day, but it feels like you crushed the entire day. Yeah. Because when you're in an environment that is stressful, and this is another thing that I really talk about when I do, a lot of times I'll do lives while I do my ice bath. We'll go on TikTok or something, I'll do a live video and I'll talk about what it is, what's happening to me, why am I doing it. Some people follow along, it's fun. But what I talk about is the environment that we've placed ourselves in when we're in that type of water. Ours is about 34 degrees, so that's real cold.
Yeah, it is.
When you're in that, disconnecting the mind from the body and learning to really hone in our thoughts and control the body, and learn that the mind is the most powerful muscle in your body. What your mind commands your body to do, it will do. Once you get past that first initial wave, that first initial shock, being in that environment is an incredible tool that translates to outside of the ice bath. We have clients with PTSD, anxiety, insomnia, all that kind of stuff that we deal with, those mental disorders, which is what that is, can be helped by being in an environment where you have this, again, it's a change in temperature. It's your body is getting cold. But when you get in it, your first instinct is always panic. It's the same thing like when someone cuts you off or saying you hit that wave and then you get mad and then but being able to calm that and control that and training your brain 2, 3, 4 times a week to where, okay, here comes this problem. I tell everybody the worst part about the whole ice bath experience is before the ice bath, that 1, 2, 3 minute mark when you're like looking at it, you're pouring the ice, you're thinking about it, you're like, that's the worst part, because everything in your brain is telling you don't do it, don't get in. That like David Goggins, man, that inner bitch comes out and starts talking to you, and just learning to get over that and really silence that and just get on with it. That's got real world application.
Absolutely. Well, and on that same point, when you're in there, one of the things that I was taught is how to breathe when you're in there, right? So big breath, slow out. And as you do that, like you can kind of put yourself into a trance, and it gets you to that point where, because it's usually the first minute is like the hardest as far as like your body being like, fuck, it's cold, and you're just sitting there and your hands are freezing, your fingers and all that.
Total immersion all the way up to the ears. Like hands, feet, everything.
So I never went up to ears. I would always go up to the neck. In fact, the tubs at Optimize were kind of smaller I'm a big guy, so it's about as much as I could get in. But yeah, the breathing is huge because you can apply that to your life. When something's going crazy or a stressor's coming at you, like thinking about your breath work and all that, and it gets your physiology going the right way. And those are things, again, to your point, there's multiple applications of doing the ice bath that you can take into the real world when you're, out there hard charging. Because you're an entrepreneur, and I want to talk a little bit about that because what we've talked about is what you're passionate about, what you do, but there's this whole business side behind it that people don't normally see. They're like, oh yeah, Brandon, he's the workout guy, or he's the personal trainer.
He got there because he has muscles. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. But the business side, what are some things that you would tell an entrepreneur that's starting their company? You had already mentioned that things take a process and time. But what are some things that you would tell an entrepreneur just starting out that would hopefully give them a little leg up?
Yeah, certainly. Speaking first to entrepreneurs who want to go into the specific business that I'm in. And that's the demographic that whenever this question comes my way, that's the demographic I feel the most qualified to speak to. I like talking to trainers. I think the industry has this massive fail rate of all these people. There are hundreds of thousands of trainers like trying to do this in some way, and they all seem to fall into the same kind of trap. They go to EOS, they get their cert, they get a job, they start making, maybe let's be generous and say they're making $70 a session, and that's it.
Super generous.
That's super generous. That's super generous. Because I know it's abysmal. Some of those guys start out at like 20, 25 bucks an hour, like, and they're like thrilled with it.
Right.
And so that's the demographic I like to speak to the most. Whenever we do seminars, those are who we speak to. To those people, I would say the first thing that you need to do is educate yourself on the knowledge that that's not the only option that you have. That's not, you can sort of get, cornholed into this notion that, all right, if I want to be a trainer, there are these steps that, okay, well, he did the steps, he's been in this for 10 years and he got here. Well, all right, I should just probably do that. And it's my absolute favorite thing. I almost said my absolute favorite thing about COVID. My absolute favorite thing about our business is what happened to us during COVID. See, because we had started, call it sort of a soft start, maybe a year before COVID. That's when I started putting feelers out, brought people in. I started doing this full time, wasn't making any money. And that's something practical that I do tell any entrepreneurs that first thing you need to understand is that I made no money for 5 years. None. I had a savings account from when I had done some real estate deals. I had my license, so I had a savings account. And for 5 years, I broke even, made $0. I lived off my savings, and I took all the money from training, from what clients I did have, and put it back into the business. Did that for 5 years, no money. So the first thing you can expect is never to make money. So if you want to do this as a trainer or as an entrepreneur in just about anything, you are going to be hungry in the beginning. The startup phase is not for everyone. And it's what I think weeds out quite a lot of the entrepreneurs. That term is so, Again, it's why I like talking to trainers who want to be entrepreneurs. And that demographic, if you can shift your mindset, look at something like what we've done, and our process is you can replicate it. And you don't need a garage gym. We've had people that take the systems on our social media followings and how we've created the funnels and how we generate leads and all that kind of stuff. You can do it in a park. You can do it in your house. You can take, if you have the right skill set, you do not have to be the trainer at EOS, the trainer at LA Fitness. You do not have to be a part of someone else's vision. And that's also where I think the definition of entrepreneur gets a little bit blurred, because when I see a trainer, they're an employee, they work for LA, it's kind of a gray area. You're not really an entrepreneur. Like you are working for someone. And I get it. Some of these gyms, TG Mesa, they do a really good job. They allow the trainers to actually train there, I think, for free. Don't quote me on that. Check that out. But I think it's close to free. Like, hey man, you make your own stuff, bring your own people in. We just want them to pay the membership to the gym. That's it. And that's a smoking deal. Even that, to me, that's still not the entrepreneur mindset that I have. I wanted 100% originality. I wanted to create something that no one had ever seen, and I wanted to do it my way. And that sounds almost arrogant, but to a degree, you have to be. If you have a vision and something that you want to see created, stick to that and forego the money. That's the first thing I tell entrepreneurs when they come to me, is like, you need to have an understanding of how to forego the money. That's the first step towards success. If you can learn and if you can get comfortable being uncomfortable and you can stick with something, you will increase your chances of success. I hate telling people you will be a success, because that is also shallow. Too many people say that, but you will have a much higher success rate if you can be comfortable being uncomfortable and stick to your vision, especially in the beginning. That first 5 years is so important. It's what laid the groundwork for everything. For us, like I said, we had 1 year before COVID, then COVID hit. And this is where it gets very specific to trainers, specifically in our business model, because our business model is COVID proof, or at least it's as close to that as you could possibly be. If you're operating your business out of your home, well, the CDC can shut down TG Mesa. The CDC can shut down LA Fitness, EOS. All those places are subject to the guidelines of the community. They can't really stop you from doing in your own home. And I'm not going to say they can't, because we live in a very tyrannical society right now. They may try, but if they get that far along, then rest assured just about everybody else is pretty much screwed. I mean, if they're coming to your home and shutting you down, everybody's in real trouble. But that didn't happen. When COVID hit, we were the only open gym in the East Valley for at least, I'd say maybe 90 days, something like that. I mean, and when that happened, I remember when it hit, I had one guy in my life who was like, okay, you need to change your mindset on this right now. Like, you need to realize what's about to happen. Because at that time, like I said, we've been there for a year. It wasn't nearly what it looks like now that you've seen it, but it was certainly far enough along. We had good equipment. I had already invested all this time, and I was doing it full time at that time. He was like, okay, just get ready. You need to hire a marketing director. You need to, all these things need to start happening. Capitalize on this as best you can. That's when I realized, because no one really thought that they could actually shut down all the gyms. No one really actually thought that this is nothing that ever happened
I didn't.
before.
I'm like, oh, this is BS.
Yeah.
Sure
I'm like,
enough.
all right, so I got to wear a mask when I go to the gym. No big deal. 89% of all employee trainers or employees of gyms were either laid off or fired during that time period. That is unbelievable to me. And seeing that's a real talking point for when we do our seminar work, when we do coaching, when we present our business model, is like, look, this was not in the original idea for this. Like, hey, one day they're going to shut everybody down, so we need to make sure we have something that can't. But it is today. And I tell everyone, I'm very open about it. If you don't think that will happen again, you're one of those people who hasn't been paying attention so far. Like, if you don't think that sort of a lockdown and shutdown, that can't happen again for whatever reason, doesn't matter where your stance is on it, it can happen again. Structure, I can't even envision the stress. If I took all the time and effort and money that I've put into my business and I did it in LA Fitness, and then let's say totally different business model, obviously, because it's not my gym, but if I crushed my marketing, if I had a whole team of trainers under me, and I had my own maybe I had an MLM, I had all my online, all that stuff was happening, and then they shut me down. Now I don't have a gym where I can shoot content. Now I don't have clients that'll come to me for personal training anymore. Now all that stuff is gone. To me, that's beyond anxiety. That's crippling.
Oh, absolutely. No, what we saw, and honestly we're still in the middle of, is absolute tyranny. I mean, we're seeing something that hasn't been seen in this country.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is why we split from Britain, and it's starting to happen, and taxes are going up. It's a mess right now. So doing everything you can to protect yourself and being smart and looking at it like you're looking, it's like, what could I do if I couldn't go into an office? How could I serve customers if I can't see them personally? And really thinking through that. I was very fortunate during that time because, I have a digital agency, so most of our stuff is done without being with customers. And then when everybody went home, everybody was able to work and do, like, we didn't really drop the ball. We had some customers that were afraid because they're like, shoot, let's pause and see what's going on. But most of them came back on after about 2 months. But man, I feel for those. My partners in the IV company, they also own Burn It Build It Fitness, and they went through that. They had 2 locations. They'd have cops coming in and be like, hey, you need to close it down. And they're fighters. They see things the way we see things. And I'm like, man, if they're doing this to these types of businesses, what's going to come back? And to your point, I think this can happen again. So we just need to be kind of prepared for it and to speak out, because some things you can't completely control, but you can at least control making awareness about it.
And if you're somebody who's, let's say you're in the startup phase and you haven't put all the time in yet. You just got your cert, you're trying to figure out what path to take. That's a good place to be in. You haven't put all your time and effort into something that could be taken away from you. Choose. I mean, this hit everyone. Bezos Koulian, he Burn Buddy, they shut down. He was saying he showed his revenue loss over the last. That dude's crushing it. That guy's what every forget trainers, any fitness, anything. We hope to be at that level one day. He got hit by it. I mean, you're talking about some powerful forces that can. If you are structuring your business, be selfish with it. Think about yourself. That's a big point, and that's the problem, I think, with specifically when the shutdown started happening. The big narrative was to stop thinking about yourself. Think about how they do this thing. And I know how this sounds sometimes when I tell myself, but I'm like, sorry, that's not the way the world works. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. They're telling you to think about other people. You're structuring your business for you. Be selfish with it. What is going to be the safest means of success for you? Now with the knowledge you have, and this is not, we're not pre-lockdown anymore. That exists. That can happen. Make your decisions going forward based on that knowledge. Learn from it.
Totally.
They can do this, and it's just one of these, the shutdown. That's, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but that's just one reason why I like the way we've done it. You get true freedom of expression if you really are an entrepreneur trainer. And if you take things like, for me, it wasn't just the gym. I wanted to make sure that the education, that all the research and everything was done on the back end, so that this was a real immersive experience backed by the scientific data would accept. It just wasn't a guy in his garage. And to push it this far, again, it's, call it generously 12 years of research, development, and build-outs. That's what it's taken. And that's honestly kind of fast. You look at anything that's successful in life, most likely that took 10 to 15 years.
Well, I remember Andy Frisella, some part of the Arate Syndicate. So I'm not sure if it was on his podcast, but I think it was one of his trainings he was doing. And he was talking about his first 5 years with First Form, him and his partner, he made $60,000 total. In the first 5 years. I mean, in First Form today is $1 billion company, massive. I mean, great marketing, all this. But he remembers and he talks about sleeping at the office and all the things that were done to be able to get to where he is today. And back to your earlier point about like letting the money go and like just driving the vision, like that's important, super important.
So important. Maybe the most important thing for the general entrepreneur mindset is to never ever focus on the money. If your goal in any venture is to make money, my opinion, that venture is probably going to fail. I think that in order for, at least for me, because I do sleep at the office. I wake up 5 a.m. I go. I don't go to sleep. I try to get to sleep by 10. I wish, but it doesn't happen. I'm working and working and working, and I am fortunate. I live where I work. Yeah. So imagine all that time spent if it wasn't like I just wake up, eat, prep, and go. Like I have very little downtime, no drive time, no nothing, no commute. Everything for me is go, go, go. But in order to see the results from some kind of a venture like that, if you really want to have that unilateral power, that comes with the responsibility that comes with it. And I love what you said about how, first 5 years, $60,000. He wasn't focused on the money. Money comes and goes. And you'll learn that as well. When you become, because now we're well past the first 5 years. Now we do make decent money as a little home venture type thing. But here comes, in the last 6 months or so, we did a pool, a podcast studio, an IV room. Like, okay, there was this nice little comfortable nest egg that now has been diced in half, and it's gone. And you have to be, again, that was really uncomfortable for me. I was like, man, I don't know. I haven't been this broke since those first 5 years. I don't think I like this feeling. Yeah. But understanding when the time comes, okay, we need to reinvest, we need to grow, here is how we can do it in the best possible way. Being uncomfortable with that understanding that money comes and goes. Don't focus on it. Focus on the vision. Focus on what it is you're building. And if it's worth it, and you see where it can go, and then when you build it and it's actually there, when that podcast studio finished, I will seriously go in there and just kind of like, it's just great. It's awesome to actually see it in real life when it's in your head for so long.
That's awesome. So where is the vision for Strict Vision Athletics? Where do you want to take it?
It's going the way that I've seen it for a while. There's certainly a 5 and a 10-year plan. My partners, especially my younger brother, he's the behind the scenes guy for the last 2 to 3 years, who has really helped drive the business in a very practical way. I'm kind of the visionary with it. For me, it's all in my head and I just have to get it out. Like I have to create. If I don't create, I get weird. He's the one who's like, okay, that's fine. It's going to cost this. Here, that's fine. But we can't get this just yet. We've got to wait and do. So you need both the ebb and the flow. But for me, my vision on it is to, I like the idea of growing everything that currently exists. Hyperbaric chamber. We're doing another room for hyperbaric therapy. I'm very fascinated by it. I like being involved in things that I like learning about. I don't want to do something that I am not interested, because then how can I make you interested?
Right.
Hyperbaric therapy, that's one. Obviously the IV recovery, expanding on that location to its fullest potential is still being done. And there's a lesson in that as well. I mean, again, 8 years we've been there. We're still expanding just our home location. So that's one. A franchisement down the line. We are already building the 10-year goal. It's already happening. We're building a replicatable business model package, something that would be like, a month-long course worth of curriculum to actually take step by step. Do you want to actually do this? Are you a trainer? Do you want to know how to do this? Okay, here are the steps for your first year, first 3, first 5, first 7. We'll have all that laid out. Most the practical expansion for us, the vision I see, will be online. Again, I think of things in terms of, okay, can this be taken away from me? What kind of which of this vision can be passively income? Which do I have to take a much more hands-on role with? And the consensus among the team and myself is that the best way to view that expansion is probably in the online sphere. We're doing very well in that sphere. All of our social media and all that kind of stuff just continues to rise. And that is the direction that I think will probably see the most practical growth in the next 5 years, something like that.
Awesome. No, it's very, very strategic. I can tell you've got the vision in your mind, which fits the name perfect, right?
Right.
But no, this is a lot of fun. I'm excited to work with you and partner on the IV side. It's gonna be dope, guys. I know you got a ton out of this, so I want you to go follow Brandon, Strict Vision Athletics, and then I also want you to be on the lookout for his podcast. It's gonna come up You see his personality, you know he's gonna have guests that have that kind of personality. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.